I am waiting for the United Nations to condemn Putin in Russia. They put an 80-volt battery and hooked it up to the genitals, at least one of the ISIS mass murderers, and tortured him, and they videotaped it so the whole world could see. So the whole world could see. And this is what Russia does, not just under Putin, but other dictators, to send a message. No moral equivalency arguments. No demands of any kind. And, of course, what Putin does in these situations is he tries to use them to attack his enemies. So now he's blaming Ukraine, you see. I want to hit another issue related to terrorism, and then I want to get into this matter in New York. And what's fascinating to me is I've explained this Alvin Bragg case. I went back and looked over a year ago, here, and on Fox and on Blaze. And I'll explain it again, as people explain it anew today, legal analysts and so forth. But we've been on top of this on all these cases, broken them down piece by piece, and we've been right every time. But first I want to tell you about what this UN resolution was about Israel, because Kirby is lying through his teeth, and he's getting away with it because people don't know enough facts, or they don't want to know enough facts to challenge him. They don't study it. And I get this email blast from David Milstein, stepson, who was also special assistant to Ambassador David Freeman under Donald Trump, ambassador to Israel. Now, here's the summary. Netanyahu announces that if the U.S. doesn't veto the UN Security Council resolution for a ceasefire today, this is how it was reported, he's canceling Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer and National Security Advisor Gabi's White House meetings. Dermer and Hanegbi, I should say. Their trip to Washington came after Biden asked Netanyahu on the phone last week to send a delegation to discuss alternatives to a major IDF operation in Rafah. Now, this Rafah is what Israel's been trying to do for 5 months. They've pushed what's left of the Hamas terrorist battalions, where all the leadership that's not in Qatar and Turkey is hiding. They've encircled it. They want to blow out the 4 last battalions, and they want to kill the leaders. And the only one in the way is Joe Biden. Because I have my own theory on this, America, and I'm going to give it to you right now. That Joe Biden, who plays nice with the Iranians, whose administration denied that Iran had anything to do with October 7th when everybody said, what? Who keeps funding the Iranians? Who refused to attack any part of the geography of Iran after they killed 3 of our soldiers and are still shooting at our forces in the Middle East. And why they're there, I don't know. But you get the point. Because I believe behind the scenes one day we will find, listen to me, I've said it before, but I want to underscore it. One day we will find that there was a quiet arrangement between Biden and the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran. No nuclear breakout until after the election. Now, I hope I'm wrong. But I don't think I am. And the key factor I look at, I don't have any inside information. I use my noggin. The key factor I look at is all of a sudden, they watered down their fissile material. Why? Why would they do that, Mr. Producer? Now, they can quickly ratchet it back up. They can quickly ratchet it back up for a nuclear weapon. But why did they do that? And why is Biden kicking the crap out of Israel? Is it just for votes in Michigan and so forth? That's clearly part of it. That's clearly part of it. But can you imagine if Iran announces a nuclear outbreak before the war? Before the election? Can you imagine that? Biden will do anything. to get reelected. And I mean anything. So for him, this is a 2 for, 3 for, 4 for. Blame Netanyahu, trash Netanyahu, keep demanding that Israel break itself into pieces where it can't defend itself, keep accusing Israel with Hamas statistics of a war crime, now vote basically present, abstaining, so it's 14-0 on a ceasefire. And I want to tell you about this. And I believe that's what's going on behind the scenes. Why would this administration have hired this guy Malley, who's a pro-Islamo-Nazi regime, who brought in 3 individuals, one of whom, maybe more of whom, in my view, were spies. If not spies, they had a funny way of acting. But let's just say friendly, special pleaders for Iran. Why would you do that? And why wouldn't you criticize Iran? When's the last time he criticized Iran, ladies and gentlemen? Schumer doesn't go to the floor of the Senate and attack Iran. Biden doesn't attack Iran. Kirby can barely mention the word Iran. Why is that? Why is that? I think I know why. The watering down the advisable material, to me, was the dead giveaway. Why the hell would they do that? And they can quickly ratchet it back up. U.S. officials notified Dermer the U.S. plans to allow 2 separate ceasefire resolutions to pass in the UN Security Council, one calling for a ceasefire, one calling to release the hostage without one being a condition of the other. So they decoupled them. So now Israel's supposed to enter into a ceasefire, not destroy Hamas, and hope that the hostages are released. And Netanyahu said, you know what you just did? You just made it impossible for us to get our hostages out. Because you just told Hamas that one's not connected to the other. So Israel's not only supposed to surrender and not take out the elements that are left in Rafah, Israel is supposed to do so without any commitment to the release of hostages. So here's the Biden administration statement, just to show you what pathological scumbags these are. Our vote does not, and I repeat, does not represent a shift in our policy, White House National Security spokesman John Kirby told reporters. We've been clear, and we've been consistent in our support for a ceasefire as part of a hostage deal. But that's not what they voted for. Here's the text of the Security Council resolution, which says it differently than Kirby. And one of the specific points of contention is paragraph 1, excuse me, as Milstein points out. It's weird calling your stepson Milstein, isn't it, Mr. Producer? But there's a lot of Davids out there. 1, demands an immediate ceasefire for the month of Ramadan, respected by all parties, leading to a lasting, sustainable ceasefire, and also demands the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. So putting aside for the moment that Biden has shifted to pushing for an overall ceasefire as opposed to a temporary one, even before Hamas is eradicated, Israel is strongly opposing the shift in the Biden administration position in the Security Council that does not explicitly include the release of hostages as part of a short-term ceasefire with the words, and also. So they say, and also. Not, and also. It's to be a condition. Now, here's the statement from the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's office said after the vote that the U.S. retreated from its consistent stance in the Security Council that only a few days ago tied a ceasefire to the release of the hostages, which China and Russia vetoed last Friday. This retreat hurts the war effort as well as the effort to free the hostages because it gives Hamas hope that intentional pressure will allow them to get a ceasefire without freeing our hostages, he said. In light of the change in the American stance, Prime Minister Netanyahu decided the delegation will not depart. Kirby said there's no change whatsoever. Doesn't that sound like a change to decoupling to you, Mr. Producer? 'But Hamas thought, 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 'But Ha They put out this statement. Hamas thanks the UN Security Council for its demand for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, calling for a permanent ceasefire that leads to the withdrawal of all Zionist forces from the Gaza Strip and the return of the displaced to the homes from which they left. In a statement posted online, the terror group also says it is willing to engage in an immediate prisoner exchange process that leads to the release of prisoners on both sides. What does that mean? They have hostages. 135 hostages. You know what they now think the number is? 99. They think they'd murdered a third of them. Even the United Kingdom noted that the resolution, quote, "We regret this resolution did not condemn the terrorist acts perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th. That was specifically left out of the resolution. Any condemnation of Hamas, because China and Russia voted against it. And yet, the UK still voted for it. So Biden not only betrayed, as David writes, Israel, but also the over 130 hostages. I don't think there's that many, including American citizens. After promising he would do everything to secure the release, Biden has consistently done the opposite, including wrongly pressuring Israel to stand down from going into Rafah, that is a vital military pressure on Hamas, and which is refusing to credibly, act. And Rich Goldberg, who's great, he's been on my shows before, he said the UN Security Council resolution under consideration reaffirms the complete moral rot inside the United Nations, supported by the European NATO allies of the United States and celebrated by America's greatest enemies. The resolution should have been vetoed. There was a ceasefire on October 6th. The resolution makes believe that today, March 25, 2024, exists in a vacuum. That October 7 never happened. That Hamas is not a vicious terrorist organization that must be destroyed. That a permanent ceasefire can never be achieved with Hamas in control of Gaza. The resolution pretends to care about the hostages, but I told you, they specifically altered the language. So it doesn't. And Kirby goes in front of those reporters and lies through his teeth. And you want to know why, America? Because not one of those reporters actually read the resolution. Not one. Or they would have saw the decoupling. Not one of them read it. The betrayal of Israel by the Democrat Party, by the Biden administration, the State Department, which is true to form as it did in the 30s and 40s, by the Democrats in Congress, is beyond dispute or debate. They're now bragging about it. And the reason why Biden never criticizes Iran, never hits Iran, even though it kills our soldiers, keeps giving them tens of billions, hundreds of billions, more than Ukraine, and the reason is this. Because I believe there's some kind of an arrangement. What is Joe Biden doing to prevent the Iranians from getting nuclear weapons, Mr. Producer? Absolutely nothing. Zero. Why? Why is he putting all the heat on Israel? Why does he want Israel to take... It's not the citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, if he gave a damn about citizens, he'd secure our southern border. Doesn't give a crap about these Palestinians. Are you kidding me? Any more than Putin does, or China does, or Iran does. They're all pawns for these other countries. If he cared about citizens, he'd secure our border. Doesn't care about citizens with the fentanyl coming in, the slavery on the southern border, the horrendous situation, potential terrorism going on, and we're to believe he cares about those Palestinian citizens. You know what's funny? Nobody cares about them. Not even the terrorist Palestinians. But my point is, what's going on here is about election, Iran, and nukes, as well as the rest.